On July 22nd, representatives of Ukraine and Russia signed separate mirror agreements with the United Nations and Turkey to unblock grain exports from Ukraine. However, the very next day, on July 23rd, Russia attacked the Odesa commercial port with caliber cruise missiles. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres strongly condemned such actions by Russia.
This is an attempt to change this agreement, to give it a different meaning. Now this agreement is simply about the export of grain, on terms that are acceptable to us and other countries. But Russia wants to expand this agreement in such a way as to prohibit, make it possible, or obtain assurance from the Ukrainian side not to liberate our occupied territories in the south. This is Russia's game. Russia is trying to blackmail with grain exports.
The UN said the food crisis could not be effectively resolved without the reintegration of Ukrainian grain into the world market, as well as Russian fertilizers and food.
Russia must permit the safe and secure export of grain stored in Ukrainian ports. Alternative transportation routes can be explored, even if we know that by itself they will not be enough to solve the problem. And Russian food and fertilizers must have unrestricted access to world markets without indirect impediments. I have been in intense contact on this issue at the senior leadership level with the Russian Federation, Ukraine, Turkey, the United States, the European Union, and several other key countries. I am hopeful, but there is still a long way to go.
On July 29th, the UN Security Council stressed that it highly appreciated the grain deal concluded in Turkey.
The war triggered by the Russian invasion of Ukraine is over 5 months old and shows no signs of ending. Instead, the fighting is intensifying. In the face of such a grim prospect, the agreement signed on 22 July in Istanbul to facilitate the safe transportation of grain and foodstuffs from Ukrainian ports of Odesa, Chernomorsk, and Yuzhny constitutes a beacon of hope for humanity.
Permanent representative of Ukraine to the United Nations Sergei Kyslytsya said that the Ukrainian side is ready to export more than 20 million tons of grain if Russia complies with the rules of the agreement.
It is the responsibility of international partners to ensure Russia's compliance with its obligations within the framework of the safe functioning of the grain corridor. This is the only prerequisite for unlocking more than 20 million tons of grain from last year's grain harvest in Ukraine.
Most members of the Security Council acknowledged these efforts, but US and Chinese officials stressed that implementation of this agreement would be difficult.
Commend the Secretary General and the government of Turkey for their efforts to facilitate this much-needed progress. But we also saw Russia's true character a few hours later when it launched a missile attack on the port of Odesa. Bombing a port does not make it easier for grain to get out. Russia should allow grain and food to leave Odesa unharmed to feed a hungry world.
Congresswoman Victoria Spartz asks the UN to suspend the agreement on the export of Ukrainian grain. Spartz sent a response letter to UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres. According to her, the agreement does not have proper execution mechanisms. In addition, Ukraine needs better security measures. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry published a commentary on the statements of the US Congresswoman in which it assured that Ukraine would not participate in any agreements if it were not confident in its ability to protect the southern region from attacks from the Black Sea.
The security situation is controlled by the armed forces of Ukraine. There are no easy solutions in the current environment, but Congresswoman Victoria Spartz's attempt to undermine the grain deal with her next statement right now is a devastating blow to Ukrainian farmers and an economy in need of exports and income, as well as blowing up global food security. From the comment of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine on the remarks of US Congresswoman Victoria Spartz on the grain agreement.
President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelenskyy has already visited Odesa. He met there with the ambassadors of the G7 countries. They also arrived at the port to testify to the importance of fulfilling the agreement on the resumption of Ukrainian food exports from our ports.
We're here today, and I'm here with these G7 representatives, with the UN Turkey, also Ukrainian representatives, including the Minister of Infrastructure and the President, in order to support Ukraine and its efforts, all of its efforts, as you just heard, to do everything possible to get this grain to the people who need it, to hungry people around the world, and also to shine a spotlight on the fact that it's very important for Russia to live up to its commitments and to allow this grain to be exported.
A joint coordinating center with an office in Istanbul will control the movement of all commercial vessels in the Black Sea using the national infrastructure and other facilities.
The staff working at this center are aware that the eyes of the world are upon them. It is our hope that, through collective and successful work, the center will make the maximum contribution to humanitarian needs and to peace.
In the coming days, as part of the deal, 3 dry cargo ships with grain will leave the port of Chernomorsk one after another. This is reported by Russian media, citing a source in Turkey. Now work on the issue of the passage of ships along a safe corridor with an escort is underway.
Our side is fully prepared. We sent all the signals to our partners, the UN and Turkey, and our military guarantees on the security situation. The Minister of Infrastructure is in direct contact with the Turkish side and the UN. We are waiting for a signal from them when we can start.
Meanwhile, Russia continues to export goods looted in Ukraine. A ship with stolen grain arrived in Lebanon from the Crimean port. 5,000 tons of barley and 5,000 tons of wheat are on board, supposedly from Ukrainian stocks. This was reported by the Embassy of Ukraine in Beirut. Reported by Marina Stepanenko, Julia Bill, UATV News.